the Epstein files. The White House put out this booklet the other day. A lot of people said it was just recycled old news. What do you, I mean, from your opinion, what else should come out? What else can come out? What else will come out? And why?
From the day I was accused, I said I want every document out because I knew every document would prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality. At least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them. But they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money. And those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed. And they shouldn't be suppressed. If the accusation is allowed out, so should the material that diminishes the credibility of the accuser.
All right, guys, huge show coming your way. Huge. I mean, like, this is Trump version. Huge. Alan Dershowitz is here today. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Sit back, enjoy it, because this is going to be a game changer of a show. A lot of pundits want to talk about the laws, the judges, the Epstein files, the JFK files. I'm just telling you right now, this is going to blow your mind. You are not going to hear this anywhere else. I rarely, like, I love a lot of the conversations today, mind-blowing. Sit back, relax, enjoy the next 40 or so minutes. President Trump yesterday, though, having that conversation with President Putin of Russia, trying to get towards peace. I know the media is all like, he's talking to Putin. Well, how do you think peace is going to happen, you morons? That's how. You actually have to have a conversation. So they've got this ceasefire, at least on energy infrastructure so far, meaning don't blow up like nuclear power plants or electricity plants, right? They're getting there. Might not be fast, but guess what? After 4 years of nothing, maybe it won't happen overnight. But he's at least making progress, and that's what I think we should be happy for. But our own media here, the president's team is going after the Associated Press, and they just showed again why. The Associated Press literally put out a false story, a lie, misinformation, if you will, about Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. They put out this story trying to claim that Putin and Trump were best friends. But guess what? They updated the story. That's DC, Washington journalistic speak for, hey, we screwed up, but we're not going to admit it. They updated the story. And what is they update it to? Oh, we didn't mean President Putin. We meant Prime Minister Modi of India. So yeah, they're friends. Trump talks openly about the affection he has for Prime Minister Modi. But how do you screw that up if you're the Associated Press? Unless you literally are just trying to get Donald Trump, which they are. I mean, I'm just telling you, this is the crap that we put up with every day. And none of the other people, like, think about this. What other job can you screw up that bad and have no consequences? These are bad people. Get it through your head, folks. All of these people, oh, he's attacking the press. What would you say if somebody did that to you? Oh, he's undermining democracy. He's attacking the Constitution. No, he's pissed. I get upset about it for him. And I've been attacked myself. These guys lie for all of their sanctimonious BS. They're at the front of the line when it comes to spreading misinformation and falsehoods. And then they get to put this little correction at the bottom. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going to have a great conversation with Alan Dershowitz ahead, not just about all the legal stuff, because there's a lot of these judges that are doing a lot of things to prevent President Trump from moving forward with Doge. They're trying to put USAID and telling all these people are going to have to come back to the office. They're trying to bring the bad guys, the gang members back, these judges. It is unbelievable, by the way. And they're just district judges. So there will be appeals. I think they will be overruled. I'm not a lawyer, but I just don't get it. Do you hate the guy that much? You wear a black robe and whatever. But I also want to talk to Professor Dershowitz about JFK. He played a fundamental, like a historical role in JFK. Like, he was at the court informing justices when it happened. Also, he is very personally involved in the Epstein case. Will those files be let out, and what do we need to know? So he's going to have a lot to talk about with us on this stuff. On a good news story, these two astronauts that went up for a 10-day visit and ended up staying for almost 10 months because Biden left them. No one in the media wants to talk about that because it's, it makes the old man look bad. But President Trump via Elon Musk sent a rocket up, got them. They landed today, safe and sound. You're not hearing anyone say, thanks, Elon, for sending your rocket. Nope, they're down back at Tesla dealerships, keying Tesla cars. I literally drove by a Tesla dealership yesterday. It's a Tuesday. They're out there. I'm like, do you guys have jobs? Are you old federal employees? Like, what are you doing? I got it. I saw them on Saturday. I thought, okay, what a way to spend your weekend. But it's a Tuesday and you're hanging out in front of a Tesla dealership, waving a Ukrainian, Canadian, and Mexican flag. What do you, I mean, seriously, what kind of a life do you have? It is unbelievable. I can't believe this. But on another note of high, I want to praise our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Check this clip out from a hit that he did with Maria Bartiromo. Take a look.
The other day, you were asked a question by another outlet. Can you guarantee that we're not going to have a recession? And you wanted to address that this morning.
Yeah, well, look, it was a silly question. Can you guarantee there's not going to be a recession? I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee that the journalist who asked me the question that her news program's going to be on in a year. But what I can guarantee you is that there is no reason we need to have a recession. I think that there's the economy in the first quarter is doing better than the media is reporting. I think we're seeing some very good underlying data from credit card companies, from banks. I think that the airlines, which reported some bad passenger numbers, a big amount of that is from federal employees who are not flying right now. So the underlying economy is healthy.
So, I mean, look, first of all, Scott Bessent's a really smart guy, really successful guy. I didn't know he was a funny guy. I mean, the idea of I can't guarantee her show. And by the way, that her is Kristen Welker of MSNBC. Keep confusing MS because she probably should be on MSNBC, if anything. I mean, remember the pitcher from the Major League Baseball at a press conference going back several years was asked some question. He said, that's a clown question, bro. That was a clown question. Can you guarantee there's not going to be a recession? I can't guarantee the sun's going to come up. What a stupid question. And I'm glad that Secretary Bessent answered it the way he did there. Followed up the way he did with Maria Bartiromo. I mean, what a clown. Can you guarantee? Why? I mean, that's a stupid question. It really is. Can you guarantee that? No. And he went on, even when he was answering on Meet the Press, he said, I couldn't guarantee or predict COVID. You want me to guarantee something for a year from now? And he's absolutely right. Who knows? The way that NBC is going, who knows what her show is going to be? They can't guarantee that it'll be there. No one can guarantee stuff. It's a clown question, bro. All right. Staying with my positive. And so I'm going to give Scott Bessent the big winner of the day clip there. But something else happened at the Oval Office. If you've noticed, there's some clips out there, President Trump redecorating the Oval Office in a really Trumpian way. He's making sure, hey, this is like a man cave Oval Office style, right? But check this out. He put the Declaration of Independence there. Now it's covered up. It looks like a museum piece. How cool is that? I've been with him, obviously, a bunch in the Oval Office. He loves to show it off. He loves when people come. He says, have you ever been to the Oval Office? Come into the Oval Office. And he shows you around, right? And it literally is like his house. So I think it's really cool that he's done this. It's awesome. All right. As I said, Alan Dershowitz is going to come up. And I'm telling you, my friend, I've had a lot of guests over the last almost 2 years, year and change. This is going to be one of the best. This episode. He's been on a bunch, but he came with fire. So before I get to that, I want to tell you, if you want to get as fired up as Alan Dershowitz is today, you're going to want to start your day with a cup of Wired to Fish coffee. It is unbelievable. I tell you guys all the time, I love these products that I get to, that sponsor the show that I get to drink. This is my Wired to Fish. Look at that bag. I already crushed a bunch of them. Because when people come over to the house, I love to make a big pot of coffee. I save the extra for iced coffee, by the way. Another big favorite of mine. The cool thing is Wired to Fish is not just a great coffee. And I love the medium roast. Some people are more on the dark roast side. That's your call. They got it all, though. That's the beautiful part about this. But what I love is that it's a company that's not just a great product. it's consistent with my values. They give 25% of their profits to clean water, clean air, clean faith-based initiatives. And if you go on their website, wire2fishcoffee.com, you'll see what I'm talking about. These guys are openly talk about their faith, love for Jesus, love for clean water. They love to fish, obviously, wire2fishcoffee.com. So, I mean, it is awesome what they do. And I'm so excited. And I'll tell you this right now, if you want to start your day off, go to Wire to Fish Coffee, and right now you can order one of these. Not only do you get the coffee, and I bought this, guys. This is not like some promo deal. This is Sean Spicer's credit card, my ramp card, and I got a Wire to Fish mug. It says Sean Spicer Show on one side, Wire to Fish. You can't get these anywhere else. You can't get it on like eBay or anything. You can literally get that Yeti tumbler right now, and they are discounting them. I don't know why, probably because there's so much demand, but it's a great brand with a great cause, with a great Yeti cup now. So you get the discount code We Care, one word, We Care. You get 10% off. So go to wired, the numeral 2fishcoffee.com and get yourself a Yeti tumbler from the show with a great, great cup of coffee. Anyway, all right, I've told you guys this a ton of time. The IRS is the world's largest tax collection agency in the world, and they have just stepped up their enforcement for 2025 because Washington needs money. So if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, do not wait. Do not wait for the IRS to find you and call you. You will be behind the curve. You do not want to avoid this. Get ahead right now by giving the best in the business, the friends that I know over at Tax Network USA, a call. Never call the IRS by yourself. Always have a professional. I think the folks at Tax Network USA are the best in the business. Why? Because they know who to call and who not to call. When you call on your own, it's Russian roulette, baby. You don't know which agent you're going to get and what mood they're in, whether or not they've got a history of helping people or not. Tax Network USA has a preferred line. They know exactly who to call and who to avoid. They can get things done. They've recovered over $1 billion for their clients. So if you have back taxes, unfiled taxes, you want to get ahead of the curve, call the folks at Tax Network USA. It's absolutely free to talk with their strategist, and they will stop. If you're already involved in this, they will stop the letters and the calls and everything like that. Just call them at 1-800-905-8000, or better yet, go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Full word, no spaces. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer to check out the folks at Tax Network USA. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, the host of the Dersh podcast, the Dersh Show podcast, and the author of Dersh.substack.com, which has got great written insight as well. He is a professor, a lawyer extraordinaire, Mr. Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, what a perfect day to have someone of your caliber on. Class is now in session, folks. Get your pens and your pen ready. The test is at the end. I want to just start with this this order that the judge issued to Doge to put USAID, quote, back together as if it was like Humpty Dumpty. What does that mean? Meaning, is this like they have to bring them all back and then they can fire them again? Or is this saying you guys can't do it at all?
It's just not clear. Look, the president and the executive branch have authority over, obviously, government spending and government agencies. And ultimately, the Trump administration will win this case, and the courts will hold that even though Elon Musk isn't confirmed by the Senate, the president has the right to seek advice from you, from me, or from Elon Musk. So I think it's a losing argument by the opponents. But they're bringing these cases every single day. There have been more cases brought against the Trump administration, apparently in 1 month, injunction cases, than in the 4 years of the Biden administration. Now, of course, Trump's pushing the envelope. He's testing executive power, as he has the right to do. So we're going to see lots and lots of these cases. Ultimately, they'll get to the Supreme Court, and there'll be divided opinions. He's going to lose, for example, I think, on birthright citizenship. I think you need congressional efforts to change the existing law. I think he'll win on most of the deportation cases. And on Doge, probably there'll be some splits because there's nothing unconstitutional about what he's doing, but there may be violations of statutory guarantees under civil service, etc.
Okay. So it's like a process follow, but let's maybe take them one by one. On the USAID, this is what I want to harken back to what you said a second ago. Regardless of whether or not you've got a prestigious Harvard legal degree and took, Alan Dershowitz classes, I sit back and I say, okay, the president is the elected head of the executive. If he wants to restructure USAID, put it under the State Department or what have you, what is there a law that prevents him from doing that? Like, how does a judge look at that and say, you can't run the executive, Mr. Elected head of the executive?
Well, he can run the executive subject to congressional limitations. Congress can set up agencies. Remember, the Constitution doesn't establish the agencies. Congress does that. And so the Constitution has certain constraints on what can be done, but Congress mostly has the ability to abolish the education department. Can the president abolish it if Congress established it? Those are interesting questions. They're not questions about the ultimate authority of the president. They're questions about whether or not Congress has taken some of that authority away from him and given it to itself in setting up the agencies. It's complicated.
Okay.
It all resulted from New Deal in the 1930s when we established the fourth branch of government, mainly the bureaucracy.
And that's what I think is funny is that, like, and that's why I'm wondering, is this just a process foul? Meaning, can he say, okay, we're just now going to go through each one of these employees one by one, maybe, and fire them for cause?
Yeah, it is a process issue, and so is the deportation issue. President has plenary authority to decide that non-citizens can't be in the United States, but Congress has given green card holders, for example, certain statutory rights, not constitutional rights. And so a lot of these things are going to be interpretations of statutes, and Congress can change them. Congress can also limit the jurisdiction of the courts. Congress can say that the courts have no jurisdiction over DOJ, or the courts have no jurisdiction over deportation issues, except to the extent that they involve fundamental due process issues. Congress can limit the courts, maybe not the Supreme Court, but certainly Congress can limit the district courts and the courts of appeals in their power. For example, on the issue of whether a single district judge in Hawaii can tell the whole country what they can and can't do, Congress could change that. Congress could say the decision of a district court is binding only in the district in which that person sits, or in the circuit in which that district court sits. Congress hasn't done that. So it can do more to give the president more authority if it chooses to. And now that Congress is in the hands of the Republicans, they may very well choose to do that.
But they would need to do that legal, like pass a law.
But
Right.
it would, how hard it would be to pass a law today and get the president to sign it. Not that hard.
Right. All right. You mentioned the deportations, and there's been a big discussion this week on these flights. Can you just, I want to walk through this systematically because I don't have the legal prowess of taking one of your classes. So the first issue at stake is verbal versus written. So the judge issued a written order, but said some things from the bench. And people are saying, well, the written order wasn't issued until the flights left the country. Before we get to the position of the planes themselves, explain the legal difference between verbal and legal orders, if there is one.
There is none. A verbal order is binding, but it can be superseded by a written order. So here you have a verbal order which says turn them back, and then you have a written order that doesn't say turn them back. So generally, the written order supersedes the verbal order, and that will be one of the arguments that's made. It's highly, highly technical. Look, judges get really pissed off. You know, the old joke, the angel Gabriel approaches Sigmund Freud and says, we need you. God is having delusions of grandeur. He thinks he's a federal judge. And you know, judges do think they're God. And if you violate the order of a judge, they're going to go after you. And that's why I think the Chief Justice made the unusual statement he made yesterday about impeachment, etc. He wants to maintain the power of the judiciary against the legislative power to impeach. So, you know, we're not in a constitutional crisis. We're far from a constitutional crisis because the system is working. But
Right.
we're in a constitutional conflict. And that's exactly what the system of checks and balances was designed to help us solve. And so it's working. So let's stop calling this constitutional crisis. And in terms of impeachment, I think it was AOC who first called for impeachments, and Democrats who called for impeachments. You know, let's take impeachments off the table. As you know, I defended President Trump
Right.
in first impeachment. I didn't like it then. Impeachment should only be used in extraordinary cases consistent with the Constitution. Of course, judges are different than presidents. Presidents are elected. Judges serve during, quote, good behavior. So it's not clear what the criteria for impeaching a judge is. Bad behavior. But what does that mean?
That's an interesting distinction. I wasn't ready to go there yet because I want to stay on the flights. But I had this discussion with some non-lawyers this morning. For politicians, it says like high crimes and misdemeanors, right? But for judges, it's good behavior.
Right. Yeah,
that's
and
fascinating.
This is and good behavior generally means as long as you're not drunk every day. We've had judges drunk every day. I once had a case where I argued a case in front of a judge who was like 90 years old, and he started asking me questions, and they were utterly irrelevant. And it became obvious soon that he was thinking about a different case, and he was reading from briefs in a different case. Here's a man who shouldn't have been on the bench. But his colleagues didn't have the guts to tell him that, and so he stayed on the bench and did terrible things for years. And it's very hard. We've hardly ever impeached judges except for bribery and very, very serious offenses like that.
All right, let's go back to the planes for a second. One of the other arguments that the White House was making is that the planes were in international airspace when the written order came down. Does that matter?
No, I don't think so. If the judge said unequivocally in a written statement, the planes are over the Gulf of America or wherever they are, and want them to be returned, you can do that. Let me tell you a very interesting story. So I'm on an airplane about to go to New York to be interviewed by Geraldo Rivera, and suddenly the police come onto the plane and take somebody and grab him and pull him off the plane out the back entry. And we ask, and they say, that was Vicente Fox. They took him off the plane because there was a threat on his life. So I go up to the pilot who's about to take off and I say, excuse me, sir, if there's a threat on Vicente Fox's life on the plane, don't you think you ought to check to see whether the threat was that the plane would be blown up? I don't want to be flying to New York on a plane that Vicente Fox was a target of. And he said, nah, I'm just going to fly to New York. Well, I got on the phone and I called the federal judge. And I got the federal judge to order the plane not to be flown until it was inspected. And of course, that plane was on the ground. But I do think that you can get a plane to be turned around if it's in international waters. Now, nobody is going to be held responsible for that because the law is not clear, and the statement wasn't clear, and the authority of the judge wasn't clear, and the fact that all these people, whatever their status was, wasn't clear. For example, I'm not sure it was so wise for the administration to invoke the Alien Act of 1798. I think what they should have said is, look, we've investigated each one of these people. They're all terrorists. None of them have green cards. None of them have visas. They're illegals. And we're just putting them on airplanes and getting them out of here, which the president has authority to do. There have been some rumors now circulating that maybe not all of them were gang members. Maybe the government arrested some people who were just next to gang members. So that will all play out. But generally, the president has great authority over people who do not have status in America. If they came in illegally, they don't have green cards, don't have visas, and I suspect a great many gang members fall into that unprotected category.
So just, again, to put a pin in this first thing, when people talk about did he violate the order, regardless of the constitutional crisis mumbo jumbo, in your opinion, did he or did the White House in any way, shape, or form violate the judge's order?
Not to the degree that they could be held responsible. Look, if I were the responsible lawyer and I got an order, I would ask for a clarification. I would say, Your Honor, do you insist that we have these planes turn around? We don't know if they have enough fuel to turn around. Does it put risks on the pilot? Does it put risks on the people who are on the plane with all these terrorists? I would try to get a clarification. And
unless you didn't want one, though. Unless you didn't want one. I don't think they wanted the clarification. I think they wanted plausible deniability and ambiguity to say, oh, well, we didn't know that you did this. We thought you meant maybe this or that. There was in conflict between the verbal and the written. Oops, the plane landed.
Well, but the government then could have sought clarification if they wanted it. I think both sides wanted a little ambiguity. And I suspect nothing will come of this issue of violating the judge's order. I think that the judge will finally find, all right, there was enough ambiguity. We're not going to hold you in contempt for violating the order. Now let's get to the issue of whether it was valid or invalid. We also have the case involving Khalil now, whose case has been transferred to New Jersey from New York. He wanted it to be in New York, and the other side obviously would have preferred to have it in New Orleans or Louisiana somewhere. But it's going to be in New Jersey, and we'll have to see. The thing that's missing from the coverage of that case is I strongly suspect that he obtained, I don't know this for sure, I strongly suspect he obtained his green card and his visa fraudulently. Because
Why?
You're asked the question, have you advocated? Do you intend to advocate? Do you intend to provide any support for any designated terrorist group? And if he answered that question, yes, he wouldn't have been allowed in. And if he answered that question, no, I suspect the government could prove that he engaged in fraud because he wanted to support Hamas from the moment he sought application to the United States. There's no doubt in my mind he's a Hamas supporter, notwithstanding what he has said and denied. The evidence seems to suggest he was handing out leaflets in support of Hamas, calling October 7th the Al-Aqsa flood, promising to do it again. This is a no good, Nick. And I don't think that, I've just written an article saying if this guy were a Nazi and was advocating Nazism, would the ACLU now be representing him? Would all these academics and professors be calling this a free speech case? Or do many of them call it a free speech case because they actually approve of what he said? I think that's an interesting issue.
I do too. But let's just get back to a second, like this idea of if you apply for a visa and you lie on the visa, the underlying document, in some way, shape, or form about your intent, is it the law that then they can be removed just for that alone? Like it doesn't even matter what they engaged in or didn't. If you lie on the form to come over here, does the government then have the authority to remove you?
Yes, absolutely. Now they have to prove you lied, but if they can prove you lied and engaged in fraud, this is so serious that even if you're a naturalized American citizen, even if you're a U.S. citizen and you lied on your application to become a U.S. citizen, they can revoke your citizenship and deport you. But certainly if you're just a visa holder or a green card holder, and they can prove, but they have to prove that you lied and committed fraud in your application, then you can have your status rescinded and you can be deported for that alone.
So even though he had a green card, the underlying first document was the visa that got him here in the first place. So if he lied on the visa, then it almost invalidates the green card if they can prove that he engaged in behavior that would have not allowed him here in the first place.
That's right. And I think they can prove that. And I think they're probably busily trying to gather the evidence. There are a lot of people at Columbia who try to protect them, including the university itself, which won't give out documents. They ought to subpoena those documents. Columbia does not have a right to protect somebody who may, in fact, have engaged in fraud. But let's find that out. Let's get the facts, and then we'll have a fuller basis on which to know. The one thing I'm sure of is that nobody should be defending Khalil's statements on the merits. They are despicable, disgusting statements. He should be treated just the way we treated the Nazis in Skokie. Yeah, we defend your rights to be Nazis, but, we don't defend what you've said on the merits. We think what you've said on the merits is despicable. Justice Brennan once was asked, what would he do if he saw an American citizen burning a U.S. flag? He said he would defend his constitutional rights, then he'd punch him in the nose. And that's the dealing with Khalil. We should not be in any way defending his statements on the merits. He is not somebody who just advocates free speech. He's somebody who supports terrorism.
I agree with you. I've said all along, I've served in the military for over 25 years. I will defend your right to burn the flag and say crazy stuff, but I will call you I will use the same rights to give you that right to call you a despicable, horrible, horrible person. That,
yes.
And that's the difference. And that's where I think we've lost.
We have. Yeah.
People now, if they don't like you, you've been a victim of this. Just purely defending the rights of somebody is now why we want to cancel people.
Yeah, and look, Harvard Law School is the worst villain of all. We had students at the Harvard Law School overwhelmingly voting to boycott Israel, and professors at the Harvard Law School chanting and protesting in favor of this guy Khalil without doing the Nazi thing. What they have to do if they want to be in favor of this guy's free speech, you have to start the way we started with the Nazis. We despise what you said. We oppose what you said. We think what you're doing is disgusting. but that's what the Constitution is designed to protect. The Harvard law professors didn't make that distinction, and I call them out on it.
When Marco Rubio talks about the one thing that I heard that's interesting distinction is there's Article 3 judges and there's immigration judges. And does it matter where this thing ends up? Because I would assume that the real fear for a lot of these folks is they end up in an immigration judge, which isn't an Article 3 judge. Is that right? And if so, explain.
Well, the Article 3 judge can't be removed, obviously, except in cases of impeachment. He has a constitutional status. Immigration judges, bankruptcy judges, magistrate judges are legislatively authorized judges, but in practice, it doesn't really make the difference. I've argued in front of all kinds of judges. They all wear black robes. They all have the ability to contempt, and they all demand that you show incredible respect. You know, in England, they used to require every judge, all of whom were white males, of course, to wear an identical wig to send a message that the law doesn't depend on personality, that it only depends on the abstract concept of the law. The Bible knew better. Back in the Bible, in the book Deuteronomy, God instructs all of his judges, do not recognize faces. Do not do justice based on who the individual is. Wear blinders. The mask that you have to wear, the judge's blindfold, comes from Deuteronomy in the Bible, not a Greek statute. And so there's too little of that in America and in the world today. People today are judged by judges based on party affiliation, based on who they are, based on race, based on gender, based on sexual orientation. That's all wrong. Everybody should be based on the facts of the case and the law of the case without regard to who they are. Cite the Bible for that.
Book of Deuteronomy.
Right.
So for moving from one Ivy League school to another, there's this case of this doctor at Brown University in Rhode Island who went back overseas to attend the funeral of a Hamas leader. And so again, is this very similar?
The Hezbollah leader.
Hezbollah leader. Apologies. Is that similar to what you just described, or is that in any way different case-wise?
No, I think, first of all, she lied through her teeth. What she said is, I don't follow the political teachings of Nasrallah, just his religious teachings. There is no distinction. What Nasrallah has said is that the Quran demands that you kill every Jew hiding behind every rock, that you murder every Jew, and that Israel can't exist. The idea that she believes in his religious statements, but not his political statements, is absolutely absurd. So, you know, I think that going to that funeral of Nasrallah, this mass murderer, obviously shows support. Now, she's not a green card holder, so her status is much more easily disturbed. But then you have a Yale Law School professor who was hired at Yale Law School for the civil rights program, who turns out to be a shill for Iran. There are many people in this country, because Qatar pays for them and pays money, large amounts of money. Usually it's dark money to universities, and many of them accept the money on condition that they'll hire these thugs who are really agents for foreign countries. So, look, Donald Trump has a point here, and we ought not to dismiss it. And let's give the administration an opportunity to prove their case. You know, sometimes instead of saying ready, aim, fire, this administration says fire first, then ready, aim. And that's when the courts come in and say, wait a minute, before you fire all these people, before you deport these people, a little due process. But let's not confuse that with support for these people on the merits.
100%. All right, one last thing on immigration, and then I want to move to pardons. Before I do this, the Heritage Foundation has sought, I guess it's a Freedom of Information Act, on Prince Harry's visa application to come to the United States, because he admits in his book Spare that he used multiple drugs, illegal drugs, including cocaine and psychedelics. If he checked no, that he didn't use drugs on that form, is that evidence of special use? Is that cause for removal? Where does that fall? I see you smiling. So I was so excited to hear your answer on this one.
Well, you couldn't have asked a better person. One of my first clients ever in history was John Lennon, the Beatle.
Yeah.
And the Nixon administration wanted to have him deported because he had not acknowledged his use of marijuana, which was then illegal in England. And we fought the case all the way up, and we won. And it was the worst case I ever won. I wish I had lost the case. If I lost, John Lennon would have been deported back to England. he'd still be alive and singing today. I once said that to his wife, and she was furious at me. She was so happy we had won the case because she said he had the best 10 years of his life between the time we won the case and the time he was murdered on streets of New York. So, yes, in theory, you can be deported if you deny drug use when you have, in fact, used drugs. We were able to win in the John Lennon case because the law was very unclear. But in theory, if you lie in any way on a material fact in your application, you can be deported.
But let's just say he did. Is that I mean, is it, hey, we need to uphold the law, or do we, because of Prince Harry and I mean, like, how do you think, like, I also find it interesting that like, because he's a public figure, that they actually will get access to these records. Isn't that in itself an anomaly?
Yeah, and it does suggest the double standard. Look, Prince Harry ought to be allowed to stay in the United States. I don't think he ought to be deported. I don't think John Lennon should have been deported. But sometimes deportations are used for partisan or political reasons. Again, we need to have a single standard in practice.
All right, let's move to pardons for a second.
Sure.
President Trump has suggested that because Joe Biden, there's a lot of evidence that he used the Autopen for a lot of things. Many politicians use Autopens, senators, cabinet members, etc. The president himself. First, on its face, does it even matter how the document was signed, whether it's an Autopen or in person?
It matters depending on whether you're talking about a pardon or a bill. The Constitution.
Whoa, why? Why?
Constitution expressly says about a bill, he, the president, shall sign it. He shall sign it. That's in the Constitution. Whereas for pardon, all it says is he has the power to grant pardons. It doesn't require a signature, pen on paper. But for a bill, it does. And so I do think that if a president uses an auto pen, the kind of auto pen we have now, remember Thomas Jefferson back in the 1700s invented the auto pen, basically. What he had is a pen that he would sign, and then it would be attached to a piece of metal, and there'd be another signature on another piece of paper. So he would have a copy of that. That's a different kind of auto pen. The kind of auto pen you obviously used when you were in the White House, and that my son used when he was an intern for a senator. The senator or the president doesn't even know when you write a Christmas card or a congratulatory note, what's in the content. So when it comes to the pardon, what you need to know is that President Biden himself specifically authorized the pardon. If he authorized it orally, then it doesn't matter whether he did it in writing or whether the writing was from an auto pen or not. But if he didn't know about it, and remember, we have some interviews now with Biden where he said, did I sign that? I don't think I signed that. I don't remember signing that. So, you have to demonstrate that the president authorized the use of the auto pen. The auto pen can be very dangerous because, as you know, it can be used without the knowledge of the principal.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of like a DocuSign, in my opinion, which is, can I sign documents by DocuSign? Sure. But if somebody hacked my computer and signed it, I don't know that would have the same weight of law. But let's just stop for a second. Let's take this piece by piece. Let's say that the Inflation Reduction Act was signed, provable, like you could prove it, signed by Autopen. Would that invalidate the law, the bill?
I think it would under the Constitution. Now, who would have standing to raise that is a hard question. Let me tell you, for the future, no bill should ever be signed by Autopen.
Fair enough. I got it. I didn't know this, though.
It's in the Constitution. Just read the words. It's in Article 1. It says the president, and then it says he shall sign, not may sign. Can't delegate it. He can't delegate it to the vice president or to the secretary of the Treasury. He has to sign it. And by he signing it, I think it means he has to hold that pen and actually do the actual signature. But for pardons, there is no such requirement in the Constitution.
So then let's go to the second piece. If you could prove, if Biden did an interview and he said, yeah, I don't remember these pardons, or I don't remember the one for Liz Cheney or something, would that invalidate the pardon if he specifically said, I can't remember it? Would that prove that piece of it then?
I think it would. And the question then would be who has standing. You and I wouldn't have standing to challenge a pardon of Liz Cheney. The only way to challenge it is the prosecution would have to go after Liz Cheney for one of those crimes. You have to raise as a defense the pardon, and then the government would have to prove, the pardon was invalid. It's not going to happen, but it's an interesting law school hypothetical.
I love that. I love that.
Legal view so much that I hereby give you an inflated Harvard A+ for your legal. Not worth very these days, but now you have it.
Well, it means a lot because it's free. Because I'm sure it was like 80. It's like 80 grand to take a class.
A year, not just
Yeah.
80. Yeah.
I know that's what I mean for the class. You mentioned something a minute ago where you talked about the president's use of the Aliens Enemies Act from 1798. I thought what was funny though, the other day, Tom Homan is on the driveway of the White House, and somebody says to him, a reporter, should you really be using a 200-year-old law? And Tom Homan had this great retort, regardless of whether or not you agree with the law or not. And he said, don't we still use the Constitution?
Yeah,
and I thought about it further. Which is, doesn't the press cloak themselves in the First Amendment? How old is that? I just found it funny that a reporter would talk about the age of a law under the guise, well, how old's the Constitution? How old's the First Amendment? And I thought that was a pretty weak retort.
Not only that, but I collect things, and I have a copy of the first bills that were ever passed by Congress, and many of them are still being used. The Judiciary Act is still in force. Many acts that were done by the framing fathers of our Constitution, including, Madison. By the way, Jefferson loved his Autopen so much, he had one made for his friend Madison. So Madison also had an Autopen that he used when he was president of the United States. So it was not only Jefferson. But you're, of course, right. Old is good when it comes to constitutional and historical and precedent. So let's not diminish 1798 laws. A lot of them are still on the books.
All right. The last thing I want to ask you about is the Epstein files. The White House put out this booklet the other day. A lot of people said it was just recycled old news. What do you, I mean, from your opinion, what else should come out? What else can come out? What else will come out, and why?
This is not an opinion. This is a fact. I have seen, remember, I was accused falsely in the Epstein, and ultimately I was completely cleared. The woman admitted that she may have mistook me for somebody else and withdrew all of her lawsuits. And so from day one, from the day I was accused, I said I want every document out because I knew every document would prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them, but they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money. And those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed. And they shouldn't be suppressed. If the accusation is allowed out, so should the material that diminishes the credibility of the accuser. We want total transparency on this. Every single document, no redaction. That's what I've said from day one. I waive any of my rights of privacy. Anything there is about me, I'm happy because it will be exculpatory, because I know I haven't touched a woman other than my wife from the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. I don't even hug people, but I was falsely accused and I was able to prove it. And I was able to prove it through documents. And I want other people to be able to disprove false accusations through documents. But these documents are being suppressed and withheld.
Okay, so then this is literally the last question. Do you have confidence that when Pam Bondi says, I'm ordering the FBI to give me these documents to go through, will we ultimately see the documents and the redactions that you're referring to, or are we going to get more of the same?
I hope so. I have a lot of faith in Pam Bondi. She and I worked together closely on the first Trump impeachment. She is a wonderful, honest woman. I think she will do everything she can within the law. But judges are the ones who are preventing some of the material from coming out.
Okay, so she could want to do it. We could see like another injunction.
Yeah, it's possible. Or she could want to do it, but just feel constrained by rulings of the judge that she's not in a position to challenge. But look, I hope she releases everything. She is well-intentioned. and the American public have a right to know everything, not just partially. Let's go to the Kennedy. Do you think that everything about Kennedy is being released? I cannot tell you what I know about Kennedy that isn't being released. Kennedy had numerous affairs while he was president with people with who could provide a motive for his assassination. We know that he had affairs with people involved with the mafia. Is that stuff coming out? I haven't heard a word about Kennedy's affairs coming out. Now, we know Kennedy's grandson now is babbling about, no, none of this stuff should come out. I think there's a lot of stuff about John Kennedy that we don't know, and the FBI and the CIA had to have investigated it, because clearly one of the possible sources of motives for killing Kennedy had to be his improper sexual relationships, which were numerous and which involved very dangerous people, including people connected to Sam Giancana, the head of the mafia in Chicago. Let's see that information. I haven't seen a word about that. Maybe it's out there, but I'm not aware of it. And the press.
Professor, indulge me on one second, because you have more expertise. You've written a book about this. Just on this, what President Trump is doing to get the hostages out in Hamas. Just give me a grade, because you are an expert in this beyond your legal prowess. Is he doing the right things to get these hostages out and bring peace to the region?
He is. I think he's using force. He knows Hamas won't listen to reason or morality, and that the only way Hamas will capitulate is if they know they have no choice other than to do so. One more point. We're supposed to get the information about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King also had a mixed record in history when it comes to his own sexuality. There allegedly are tape recordings of him involved in some sexual activities. Are we going to see that? The one thing we should never have is a statement that we've released everything, when in fact there's stuff that hasn't been released. That's the worst of all possible worlds. I strongly suspect that's going to be true of Martin Luther King. I am absolutely certain it was true of John Kennedy. And I know personally it's true of relation to Epstein. So I'm a hawk when it comes to disclosure, because I have nothing to hide. I want everything disclosed about everybody. I may be one of the few people who can say that with complete confidence, that it would never come back to hurt me, and therefore it's very selfish. But I'm being selfish now. I want everything out there about everybody.
I love it. Professor, you always bring the goods. Thank you for your generous time and insight. I am smarter every time you come on here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I am smarter every time you ask me questions. So
very kind. Thank you, sir. All right, guys, what an amazing show. I'm so excited. We got a great panel coming your way tomorrow, and then a great show on Friday about where we are in crypto, the economy, tariffs. You're not going to want to miss that. Because I think so much of the economy is riding on what President Trump is doing. We're going to break it all down for you. I put out that newsletter free twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for free. If you are a subscriber on the VIP level, you can always gift it to somebody. And you can always sign up for a free trial, by the way, if you just want to check it out, because it is free. But then you can also get the paid content for free on a trial basis. So go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.